This is the Gossage Report. I'm Andrew Gossage for New Right Network. Today on social media, 41% has been trending after a poll suggested that many people would support Democrats over Donald Trump. Democrats that matched favorably against Donald Trump included Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. It's important to keep this in context, though, as during the last election cycle, when Donald Trump was elected to president, the polls weren't exactly showing in his favor either. It's also important to remember that elections are a while off. Things can still change either way, which is why it's really important, if you support Donald Trump, to mobilize yourself, to engage with others, and to help spread the MAGA cause. New details have come out regarding Donald Trump's deal with Mexico. It appears that Mexico is to be designated as a safe third country. That means people passing through who are seeking asylum would have their asylum requests processed in Mexico rather than in the United States. As up to 90% of asylum applicants in the United States fail to actually show up for their hearings and go MIA, this would significantly decrease the amount of illegal immigrants that we have within our borders. Mexico has 45 days to show that it will put forth an effective effort in curbing immigration coming up from our southern border. They have committed to deploy 6,000 of their National Guard to their border with Guatemala to prevent South American immigrants from entering into Mexico with the intent of moving up into North America. The House of Representatives has approved a measure that would allow its Judiciary Committee to pursue legal action against Attorney General William Barr and others who have failed to show under subpoena. There is a question on whether or not they would win that legal action, but I think instead of focusing on that, we should draw our attention to why they have been issuing these subpoenas. Our elected officials in the House of Representatives have been wasting taxpayer money pursuing an investigation that has already been resolved. Special Counsel Robert Mueller was commissioned to determine whether or not there was collusion between the Trump administration and Russia to help him get elected. They concluded that there had been no collusion, but now Democrats are seeking to prove that he obstructed the investigation. Why Trump would obstruct an investigation that showed that he was innocent of an underlying crime is yet to be determined. What is for certain is that they are wasting taxpayer money. Nothing's going to come from this. Donald Trump isn't going to be convicted of anything because he's innocent. But a lot of taxpayer money will be wasted. Let's turn to our 3D, that's 3 dumb declarations by Democrats. A segment that we're going to be spending quite a bit of time on today, because it seems that the Democrats have failed Econ 101. For instance, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, all workers deserve cost of living increases, including minimum wage workers. That sounds nice. It sounds nice to say that we should increase the pay that minimum wage workers receive. But that fails to address the underlying principles that economics seek to address. Money doesn't have absolute value. You can't ascribe a specific amount of worth to a dollar. It is merely a way of describing relatively how much you're willing to spend on an individual thing. For instance, let's say for minimum wage workers, housing costs on average $1. Let's say 50% of their wage goes to housing and they make $2. They can spend that dollar to obtain a house, and then that's great. They have a place to live. Minimum wage increases. Next time they seek to move, instead of costing them $1, it could cost $2 because their wage doubled. If they now have $4, a broker who understands that before they were willing to pay $1 out of their $2 will now charge them $2 out of their $4. They have no reason to do anything else. What if somebody objects to this and really wants to spend only $1? That creates a market force where people are going to try to produce houses for as cheap as possible. That means they're going to produce houses that are of lower quality, and they will spend less on paying people to make them. Even if they're forced to spend that $4 per worker, they're going to have as few workers as possible. This means that people are going to be out of a job. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez fails to realize these things. Fails to realize that when you make those decisions, when you push people out of their jobs because companies aren't able to afford the minimum wage hike, that's going to push people into the arms of the government. The government is going to go further in debt, and eventually the government is going to go bankrupt. Just like what happened in Venezuela. Representative Ilhan Omar, not to be outdone, brought up the wage gap. She said, quote, "Moms equal pay is a reminder of the unfair reality that many moms face every day. Moms who work full-time year-round get paid 69 cents for every $1 dads get paid. There is a much larger pay gap for moms of color. We must close the gender wage gap. It's discriminatory." This is also about relative value. Just like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez doesn't understand the relative value of $1, Ilhan Omar doesn't understand the relative value of labor. Labor is a commodity that you can trade. How much of your time, your labor, are you willing to spend to get the amount of money you want? If you put in less time and less labor, you'll get less money. It just works like that. There's no way around it. Women on average choose jobs that are more flexible. They choose jobs that have fewer hours and lower risk. It's not worthwhile to them to put in the same amount of effort, the same amount of risk, and the same amount of rigidity that a man is willing to put in, and that's fine. That's women making a choice. That is female empowerment. That they can choose whether or not they want to work those hours. But the fact of the matter is, they're not going to get more out of their deal than they're willing to put in. It's a basic principle of economics. Moving on from economics for a moment, we have Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who seems to not understand what the United States does and doesn't do when it comes to pollution. He is calling for America to be a leader on climate. Whether or not you agree that climate change is a major problem, if you look at the facts, you have to accept that America is not exactly the world's leader in pollution. They are ranked, or I should say, we are ranked 16th when it comes to CO2 emissions per capita. That's even though we are the most technologically advanced nation in the world. We account also for just 0.86% of mismanaged plastic worldwide, despite the fact that we are the third most populous nation in the world. For comparison, Vietnam, a country with far fewer people, accounts for nearly 6% of the nation, or of the world's mismanaged plastic. It seems clear, as a result of all these things we've talked about today, that Democrats really don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. And it's interesting that these people that I have spoken about today are at the forefront of liberal politics. That's concerning. They don't understand the nation's role in pollution. They don't understand the basic principles of economics. How can we expect these people to lead the nation? This has been Andrew Gossage with the Gossage Report.